Hello, my name is Adam Hall, and welcome to the Vintage Sanctuary, a place where we can take a break from all of the hullabaloo and we can focus on the community, the history, the artistry, and the nostalgia of vintage cards. So glad to have you along. I'm relatively new at this, but I'm super excited. I'm going to be on Mike Moynihan's next episode of Golden Age of Cardboard, so if I figure out how to do it, I'll put a link in the description once that comes out, which should be tomorrow, as of the recording of this video. He was gracious enough to have me on to kind of let me share my journey, so if you're interested in my journey, you can check that episode out. I had no plans of being a vintage baseball card collector, and so I think I've got a pretty interesting journey. But for today, I want to share with you the 7 Babe Ruth baseball cards that I have collected so far. All of these I collected last year in 2021. None of them are comma cards. None of them cost $1,000 or more, where you'd need a comma in the number. None of them were even $100 or more. They were all under $100. In fact, most of them were closer to $50 than $100. I'm saying that, not because I want to focus on the prices, but just to show that there are opportunities to get vintage baseball cards of the Babe at reasonable prices. And these are all graded cards, but if you got them raw, then they would be even less. So let me just go ahead and turn this camera. You can see the first card. But before I talk about this first card, let me just say that when I first started collecting vintage baseball cards less than 2 years ago, I was kind of bummed out because I realized it would be hard for me to afford any playing days Babe Ruth cards. I mean, maybe I could get the Vanilla Margarine, which looks like a pretty cool card. But, just about any vintage playing days Babe Ruth card would be a stretch for me. And of course, many of them are just way out of my budget. So that kind of bummed me out. Until I had this epiphany, and I said, aha, what we're looking at right here, for example, is indeed a vintage Babe Ruth baseball card. Now, it's not from his playing days, but it is a vintage Babe Ruth baseball card. And so now I've embraced it, and I just love this card and the others that I'm going to show you. So how do I know it's vintage? Well, this particular card's from 1960, so I don't think anybody would argue with that. That's definitely during the vintage era. And how do I know that it's a baseball card? Well, it appears to be cardboard. And so that's my litmus test. I trust SGC that it's cardboard. I suppose it does not have the eBay authentication sticker on it. But, I'll take my chances. It sure looks like cardboard to me. I suppose I could maybe ask the Pepino man if he would just take a little nibble off of it to see if it tastes like cardboard, because he has more experience than I do. But it certainly looks like cardboard. It acts like cardboard. So, yes, it is a vintage baseball card of Babe Ruth. And I think a number of these vintage cards of Babe Ruth from after his playing days, I think they represent excellent value. Now, I'm not talking about investment value here. I don't know if they'll go up or down in price. I'm talking about excellent collector value, which means, wow, you don't have to spend that much money to get a vintage baseball card of either one of the greatest ever or the greatest ever. Who am I to say? A lot of people say he's the greatest ever, but he's certainly way up there. He's certainly on the Mount Rushmore of baseball players. So without further ado, this is the 1960s new card number 1 of Babe Ruth, and it celebrates him, it says breaking a record, breaking the record and having a world record of 3 homers in a series game. I'll just read a little bit of it. October 6, 1926. Babe Ruth broke the world's record by hitting 3 home runs in today's 4th game of the Yankee-Cardinal World Series. By the way, the Yankees lost that series, it turns out. And now the last paragraph. The St. Louis Cardinals crowd, which sat silent on his first 2 drives, stood up and cheered. They had just seen world history made a new record. I think this is a pretty cool card. It's black and white and red, and it looks like a newspaper. Hey, what's black and white and red all over? A newspaper. It's black and white and you read it all over. That's an old corny joke. The kids, I don't think were too excited about these cards though, because these were competing with the colorful 1960s Topps cards. So when a kid opened a pack of these baseball highlights, I suspect many of them thought, what is this? And even felt a little bit maybe gypped for their nickel, because if they wanted to read the newspaper, they could have just read their parents' newspaper. So there's not a lot of these that are graded. In fact, the next couple that I'm going to show you, I sent in for grading myself. However, it's possible there are quite a few of these out there in the wild, in the raw. I really don't know. Or it's also possible there are not that many because a lot of kids just toss them because they didn't care for them. But I really don't know. I don't think these were actual newspaper articles. I think they just, I think New Card just created the article, if you will. But if anybody knows, please say so in the comments. On the back, I like the green and black, and you'll have a trivia question. And if you can read upside down, you'll see the answer at the bottom. But if you're unable to read upside down, if you're able to rotate 180 degrees, then you can also see the answer. So there's my first playing days or non-playing days Babe Ruth card. Now for the second one. Also new card. This is one where I didn't spend much. I found the nicest one I could find that was, inexpensive, but looked good to me, and I sent it into SGC. And that price range that I mentioned earlier, that included the SGC grading fee. Babe Ruth hits his 60th home run. New York, September 30, 1927. The immortal Babe today set baseball's most famous record by hitting his 60th home run of the season. Starting today's last game of the season, Ruth had a total of 59 homers. This equaled the old home run record set by the Babe himself in 1921, the mighty Sultan of Swat. Let's move to the last paragraph. Here in the 8th inning, Ruth thrilled the fans by setting a 60-homer mark for future sluggers to better. And it's got a trivia question on the back as well. Who hit 3 home runs in a single World Series game? And if we turn it over, it says Babe Ruth. See baseball highlight number 1. And of course, we just looked at that card, so that's pretty cool. Some of these answers refer you to other cards. Again, these new cards are from 1960. But we know that in 1961, someone did break Babe Ruth's single-season home run record, and that was Roger Maris. And so I'm going to show his 1960 Topps card. Even though this is about my Babe Ruth cards, I'm going to show this 1960 Topps card. It's the only Roger Maris card that I have. I kind of splurged and got this higher grade 7.5. I think just an incredibly beautiful card. I'm also showing it because this is what the 1960 new card was competing with, was the 1960 Topps cards with their gorgeous color. And so I feel like the new cards didn't have much of a chance there to compete, although I really like them, but I can see how kids would go for the 1960 Topps instead. Okay, another 1960 new card, baseball highlights. This is also one that I bought in the wild and sent to SGC. I figured, this one was a 5. The last one I sent in was a 4.5. I figured they'd be somewhere around there. I really wasn't concerned about what grade they got. I figured it'd be, somewhere 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5, maybe 5.5. Who knows? Ruth calls his shot, clouts homer into selected spot. Chicago, October 1, 1932. This actually is a really nice narrative. It goes through it. I'll skip to paragraph 2. Charlie Root, Cub pitcher, sizzled a called strike past Ruth. The Babe himself raised his right index finger in token of strike 1. Root zipped another fast one again. Ruth called it and raised 2 fingers in the air. From the stands, there was a terrific roar of delight. When the jeers died down, Babe stepped out of the box, lifted his hand and pointed toward the flagpole in deep center field, gesturing, "That is where the next pitch is going to be hit." On the next pitch, the Sultan of Swat swung from the ankles and sent the ball soaring. It landed a few feet to the side of the flagpole in the center field bleachers. The Cubs fans sat speechless as the grinning Ruth circled the bases. It was the Babe's last World Series homer, probably baseball's most famous. You know, these newspaper articles, these are really nostalgic for me. I really like these cards, as you can tell. Who is considered the greatest baseball player of all time? Well, according to New Card, it's not Babe Ruth. It's Ty Cobb. And I don't know much about Ty Cobb, so who am I to say? Maybe you can tell me in the comments who the greatest baseball player of all time is. I mean, I know Ty Cobb was awesome, but I really don't know that much about him because I'm still early in my journey of vintage baseball cards. Now, here's an interesting card. I suppose you could say this is also from 1960, so I suppose you could say that the new cards, the new cards, were competing with 1960 tops and also competing with these Book of Knowledge flashcards, as they're called, these edu-cards to educate you. But I doubt there was much of a competition. I think these edu-cards had a variety of historical figures, not just baseball players, and this one might, in fact, be the only one that has a baseball player. I'm not sure. A typical pose of the great slugger, baseball's all-time hero. Something interesting about this card, at least last I checked, this was the highest graded card at SGC. Not too many were graded, and higher than any graded at PSA. So this could be the highest graded copy on the planet. So I paid, again, less than $100 for it. If anybody wants to buy it for, say, $1 million, just let me know. We can work out a deal because, after all, it is the highest graded, I think, vintage Babe Ruth card of this type. But all kidding aside, I think it's just kind of cool, that I might just have the highest graded copy. Now, there could be tons of these in the wild. I don't know. It could be that just nobody really cares about these so much, and so they don't get sent in for grading. In fact, that wouldn't surprise me. But anyway, it's kind of cool. For less than $100, I happen to have, I think, the highest graded copy of this card. And it's a vintage Babe Ruth card. So how cool is that? And there's the back. I won't read it, but there's a nice kind of, I don't know if you'd call it a biography, maybe a short baseball biography of Babe Ruth. Moving along, I was so stoked to get this card. The green tint is much more scarce for the 1962 tops, and I like scarcity. That's not my number one factor for collecting by any means, but I appreciate scarcity. That's kind of cool. And the green, it's really a vivid green. It shouldn't work well with those wood grain borders, but to me it does. It just really, that color combo really appeals to me. What I really like about this card is it seems to suggest this incredible friendship between Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. And I actually don't know how close they were, but if this card is an accurate depiction of their relationship, I just think it's incredibly cool. And of course, two of the greatest of all time, two of the greatest Yankees of all time. I just absolutely love this card. And in the back, I won't read it, but there's a write-up of Gehrig and Ruth. And now, 1961 Topps Babe Ruth hits his 60th homer. Notice one of the new cards celebrated this, and now this 61 card, Topps card, celebrates it as well. Such a nice, clean card. Beautiful, beautiful card. Very sharp for a 5, it turns out. And what I noticed about the back is that the back looks like a newspaper article or part of a newspaper article. And so I don't know if they got this idea from the 1960 new cards and said, hey, let's roll with it, or if they got it independent. But that is interesting. And then finally, my last Babe Ruth card, and this I believe is the one that I picked up most recently, which I believe was October of 2010. The green tint Babe Hits 60. This was an interesting card because it was a buy it now. Again, my goal isn't to focus on prices, but I'll just say for this one, it was a buy it now for $52 with free shipping. And like the listing was funky, like the card, I think the card that was shown may not have had the green tint, or the serial number in the listing for the card, the PSA serial number, didn't match the card. There was just something that would lead people to believe that you weren't actually getting the green tint. However, the seller had a great reputation, so I said, you know what? Because of the seller's reputation, I'm gonna take a chance on this and see what happens. And I just love this. And also, by the way, this has just a little rounding to the corners. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because I really had an issue with pickiness when I moved into collecting vintage cards. And it was hard for me to embrace vintage cards because, because they wouldn't be in the same condition as modern cards. However, I'm slowly getting over that, and I'm even embracing that a little bit of wear can add character to a vintage card. And so I'm actually excited about that because, of course, it makes my vintage card collecting journey so much better when I can enjoy lower graded cards. Then there's a write-up on the back as well. Thank you so much for sticking with me till the end. I will see you at the next service or video. Peace to everyone.